Aena and a woman lay romancing in bed, gently caressing her skin, the soft glow of the moonlight casting shadows across their bodies. The air was thick with warmth and passion. Aena, known for his magnetic charm, leaned closer to the woman, his dark eyes gleaming mischievously. He brushed her cheek with the back of his hand, his voice low and playful. "Babe," he whispered, "what's the similarity between a snake and a penis?" The woman paused, caught off guard by the question. She blinked in surprise, the mood slowly shifting from intimacy to confusion. "What?" she asked, her frown forming. "You're killing the mood, Aena. What kind of question is that in the middle of this?" But Aena was persistent, his grin fading as he repeated, more serious this time. "What's the similarity between a snake and a penis?" The woman sighed, clearly irritated. Her eyes searched his face for a clue, wondering if this was some kind of twisted joke. I don't know," she said, her voice laced with frustration. "They both look alike." Akena's demeanor shifted suddenly, and before the woman could react, he began to whistle. The sound was soft at first, an eerie melody that seemed to slither through the air like the hiss of a serpent. The woman stared at him, confused and growing nervous. "What are you doing?" she asked, sitting up. The whistle grew louder, more insistent, and as if summoned by magic, something stirred in Akena's pants. The woman's eyes widened in disbelief as a long, menacing snake began to emerge from his unzipped trousers. Its glossy scales caught the dim light, and its head was raised, poised for attack. The woman screamed in pure terror as the snake lunged at her, its fangs sinking into her neck. She collapsed onto the bed, her body twitching violently before going still. Her eyes stared blankly at the ceiling, lifelessly. By morning, the village was abuzz with the shocking news. The woman had been found at the village square, her body pale and lifeless from a venomous snake bite. As we go ahead with the story, guys, please don't forget to subscribe. It's free. Also, don't forget to like this video. Alright, let's continue. The king, disturbed by yet another mysterious death, issued a royal decree. The snake must be hunted down. The best hunters were promised a reward if they caught the snake. Aena was not just any man. He was an enigma, a figure desired in one of the villages in the kingdom of Ankole. The people spoke of him in hushed tones, for there was something about Aena that made women fall helplessly in love with him. His charm was undeniable, his dark eyes magnetic, and his body sculpted and strong drew women to him like moths to a flame. But Aena carried a deadly secret. Unknown to the village, Aena, unlike other men, didn't have a penis. Instead, he possessed a snake, one that lived inside his pants, summoned by his eerie, hypnotic whistle. Each time he seduced a woman, he whistled, unleashing the serpent from his pants. It would strike without mercy, leaving its victim dead by morning. The villagers were terrified, for many women had fallen to mysterious snake bites, and yet no one could find the snake responsible. Hunters searched the forests and bushes, capturing random snakes, but the killings never ceased. Rumors began to spread. Some claimed to hear a strange whistle the night before the women were found dead in the village square. But no one dared to think Aena, the handsome builder who constructed many of the village's huts, was the killer. For who would suspect him? One afternoon, Aena made his way to the village well, where women gathered to fetch water. As usual, his presence caused a stir. Women blushed, giggled and whispered amongst themselves, each hoping to catch his eye. But today, something or someone was different. Among the crowd stood a woman Aena had never seen before. She was breathtakingly beautiful, her skin glowing in the sunlight, her traditional attire a cascade of vibrant colors. She was new to the village. As she approached the well, Every man and woman in line stepped aside, mesmerized by her beauty. Even Aena, confident and used to being the center of attention, found himself captivated. Who was this woman? Why wasn't she falling for him like all the others? Determined to win her attention, Aena flexed his six-pack abs under the bright sun, certain that no woman could resist him. But she barely glanced his way before turning her back, uninterested. Frustration burned inside Aena. Why wasn't his charm working? Every other woman in the village was dying for him, yet she acted as if he didn't exist. His irritation grew as she scooped water from her pot, splashing him in the process. "Would you help me carry this?" she asked, her voice smooth, her tone indifferent. Aena clenched his jaw, his ego bruised. Other men immediately offered to carry the beauty's pot, each trying to outdo the other, but Aena, seeing the competition, swallowed his pride. He lifted the pot onto his head, determined to prove himself. As they walked to the woman's house, she introduced herself properly. "Iara," she said. "And you are?" "Aena," he replied. "But you probably already know that, right?" She smirked. "I've heard the women talking." Akena's ego swelled again, but before he could gloat, Iara added, "You're handsome, but you're not really my type though." Howard stung like a slap, but Aena forced a smile, determined not to show his anger. His mind promised to teach Iara a lesson she would never forget. He then said he had a lot to offer her, and she should focus on his inside and not the outside. In his mind, he said she should focus on what's in his pants. They reached the house, and Aena greeted Iara's parents, who invited him to stay for dinner. At dinner that evening, Iara's parents were curious about the man their daughter had brought home. They had heard a lot about Aena, but now they wanted to know the truth from him. Iara's father leaned forward and asked, "So Aena, what do you do for a living?" Aena smiled humbly and replied, "I'm a builder. I built most of the houses in this village, but I'm not so familiar with your family. Have you just moved here?" Iara chimed in, "We're actually from another village, and we just recently moved here." She paused and glanced at her parents before continuing, "But there are rumors about snakes. They say that snakes are killing women. My parents are terrified for me." Aena shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his face growing serious. "Yes, I've heard about the snakes too. It's strange, isn't it? They only seem to target women. Mothers, sisters, daughters. None are safe. It's truly sad. No one knows why." Iara's eyes widened, her curiosity getting the better of her. "And what about the strange whistling sound? Villagers say they hear it the night before the women are found at the square. I've tried mimicking it, but it doesn't sound right." She attempted to whistle, but it came out flat and weak. Aena, feeling uncomfortable, chuckled nervously. "It's not something anyone can mimic. They say that snakes have their own language, and that whistling is how they speak to one another. If I ever hear that whistle, I'll be the first to jump in and fight the snake." Iara's parents exchanged pleased glances, her mother smiling warmly. "You are a good man, Aena. It's rare to find someone who is willing to fight for the woman he loves." Her father nodded in agreement, adding, "You have our blessing to quote Iara." Aena stood up and bowed silently, showing his respect and promising to prove his worth. Over the next few weeks, Aena did everything in his power to win Iara's affection. He showered her with gifts, beautiful dresses, jewelry, and anything her heart desired. No woman had ever resisted him this long, and it drove him mad. But Iara was different. She refused to give in to his advances, insisting that he must marry her before they became intimate. Aena, growing more frustrated by the day, found himself doing things he never thought he would, fetching water for Iara's family every day, besmearing the heart with fresh cow dung to make it shine. His obsession with winning Ayebare's love had consumed him, and soon he found himself falling for her, not just for the challenge she presented, but for the way she made him feel. All he wanted now was her validation and heart. One day, while Aena was at his hut, he whistled to let the snake out for fresh air. It slithered lazily in the sunset, its scales glistening. But as Ayebare approached, he quickly whistled, sending the snake back into his pants. He couldn't let her see it. Not yet. That evening, as Aena fetched water for Ayebare at the well, a storm began to brew. Dark clouds gathered in the sky, and the wind howled through the trees. The women who admired Aena couldn't hide their jealousy any longer. They shouted at Ayebare, accusing her of playing hard to get. "Aena loves you," one woman shouted. "Why are you pretending? If you don't want him, give him to us." Ayebare, humiliated and frustrated, turned to Aena. "Give me my pot, I'll carry it myself." But Aena refused. He glared at the other women, his voice cooled. "None of you could ever be like Ayebare. That is why I chose her, not you villagers." The women fell silent, their faces burning with shame. As Ayebare and Aena walked away, Ayebare glanced at him, a small smile playing on her lips. "What?" Aena asked. "I love you," she said softly, leaning in to kiss his cheek. Aena, caught off guard, put down the pot and hugged her tightly. "Are you serious?" he asked, grinning like a fool. Ayebare nodded, and as the rain began to fall, they ran to her house, laughing like children. Once inside, the atmosphere shifted. The house was warm, and the storm outside only intensified the intimacy. Ayebare's parents were not back yet. The rain drummed steadily on the thatched roof as Aena and Ayebare sat beside each other, their breaths mingling in the damp, chilly air. A flicker of nervousness ran through Aena for the first time in his life. This wasn't like other women who had fallen at his feet. Ayebare had made him wait, teased him with her hard-to-get attitude, and now finally here they were, alone in the bedroom. Ayebare shivered slightly, not just from the cold, but from the tension between them. She was still drenched from the rain, her dress clinging to her form. Aena reached to her, his hand brushing against her wet skin, his heart pounding, excitement coursing through him as he leaned in to kiss her neck, his lips tracing the curve of her shoulder. The room was silent, except for their soft breathing. As they lay on the bed, Ayebare's heart raced, her mind battling the wheel of emotions within her. She felt something unsettling between Akena's calm exterior, but decided to follow her heart. Akena's hand slid down her back as he grinned to himself. Finally, he thought. She thought she was so special, didn't she? But here she is, just like all the others, ready to give her legs to me. He could barely contain the wicked satisfaction that surged within him. In his mind, he whispered, "I have you right where I want you, Ayebare." Oh my God, this bastard Aena had not changed. A twisted smile appeared on his face, and his eyes gleamed as he spoke softly. "Ayebare, baby." Ayebare murmured, sinking into the warmth of the moment. What is the similarity between a snake and a penis? Akena's voice dripped with malice. Ayebare's eyes flew open, her brows furrowing in confusion. "What?" she said, pulling back slightly. "What are you talking about? You're killing the vibe." Akena's smile widened, and his voice took on a mocking tone. "No, seriously. What's the similarity between a snake and a penis?" Ayebare stared at him, her confusion turning to frustration. "Why are you asking this?" she asked, irritated. "Fine, I don't know. What is it?" Akena's grin turned predatory. They both raised their heads when provoked. Ayebare blinked, stunned by his strange answer. But something shifted in the air, a coldness that replaced the heat between them. Her instincts flared. There was something deeply unsettling about his words. Aena leaned closer, his eyes darkening with anticipation. "Tell me another similarity," he demanded. Iara, now on the edge, didn't like where this was going. "Aena, stop this, it's weird." But Akena's expression didn't soften. He repeated more firmly, "Tell me." Iara, desperate to diffuse the confusion, said sharply, "They both make women scream." She crossed her arms, glaring at him, hoping her words would end the bizarre conversation. But Aena let out a cruel, chilling laugh that echoed in the room. It was the kind of laughter that made Iara's stomach drop. He leaned even closer, his breath hot against her ear. "Then I want to hear you scream." In an instant, he opened his mouth, preparing to whistle, his eyes gleaming with a sinister intent. But before he could make a sound, Iara's fist flew open, striking him square in the throat with all her strength. Aena gasped, clutching his neck in shock. Iara wasted no time. She started whistling. The whistle, the very same eerie tune Aena had used to summon his snake. Akena's eyes widened in terror and disbelief as the snake began to emerge from his own pants. Its sleek, scaly body slid out, its sharp eyes locking onto him, ready to strike. Iara didn't stop. She continued to whistle, commanding the snake with perfect precision. The serpent lunged, sinking its fangs into Akena's neck. "How did you?" Aena stammered, his voice hoarse as he choked on his own venom. He screamed, his body jerking violently as the venom surged through his veins. He collapsed onto the floor, writhing in agony. Iara with steady hands pulled out a knife hidden in her waistband and, with one swift motion, decapitated the snake, its head rolling across the floor, lifeless as she stomped down on it, crushing it beneath her heel. Akena's body convulsed on the floor, his face pale, his breath shallow. He tried to speak, but only a weak gurgle escaped from his mouth as he struggled to grasp the situation unraveling before him. "You can come out now," Iara said calmly, her voice steady as she called towards the door. Two figures emerged from the shadows, Iara's parents. But as they stepped forward, their true identities were revealed by Iara. The older man was not an ordinary villager, but the king himself, the king of Ankole. Beside him was not Iara's mother, but the royal family's most trusted servant, a warrior disguised as a mere woman. Akena's eyes bulged in disbelief as he stared at them. "No, this can't. You didn't really think you could keep your secret forever, did you?" Iara's voice was cool and flinching. "I'm Princess Iara, and you are nothing than a monster who thought he could keep terrorizing our people." Aena gasped for air, the venom already paralyzing his limbs. How did you?" he croaked. Iara stood above him, her eyes cold and unforgiving. They had been pretending so that they could finally capture the snake that had been terrorizing the village. They knew it was not an ordinary snake. Otherwise, why would it target women? She didn't know who it was, but she had heard the mysterious whistle the day Aena let the snake out of his pants for fresh air. She had practiced it on other snakes and mastered it. Only the person who mastered the whistle could order the snake to attack. Iara knew Aena was a serial woman killer, and he could never truly fall in love, no matter how much he pretended to. So she waited and fooled him until he fell into the trap. Now, there he lay in the room, turning pale from the venom, eyes wide in shock, the life slowly draining from his body. They dragged him outside to the village square, where villagers gathered to witness the devil himself and the end of the terror that had plagued them for so long. The women who had once admired Aena now spat on his lifeless form, their faces twisted with disgust and anger. He was nothing but a snake in disguise. How could we have been so blinded and fallen for such trash? The women shouted, shaking their heads. By dawn, Akena's body along with the snake's head was burnt in the fire in the village square, the flames erasing any trace of the horror he had inflicted on the kingdom. As the sun rose, Iara and the king stood before the people, the villagers bowing low in reverence. Forgive us, princess, one woman said, tears in her eyes. We didn't know it was you. We never meant to insult you. Iara smiled kindly, her heart softened by the people's remorse. There is nothing to forgive, she said. You didn't know. They bowed deeply before the king and Princess Iara. For most, this was the first time they had ever laid eyes on them. The king was a figure of legend, and Iara, known for her grace and beauty, was whispered about in every corner of the kingdom. Only a select few were allowed to enter the palace, so the sight of them in person sent waves of awe through the gathered crowd. People murmured among themselves, eyes wide, trying to take in the royal presence. Some were bold enough to step forward and ask for favors. A few begged for jobs in the palace, hoping to serve under the king's rule. Others, desperate for relief, asked for money to ease their burdens, knowing that the king by tradition was meant to care for his people. After all, it was his duty to protect and provide for all the villagers in his kingdom. As Iara and her father prepared to return to the palace, a beautifully adorned palanquin was brought forth. They stepped inside gracefully, the crowd parting with reverence as they were carried away. The villagers couldn't help but marvel at what had just transpired. Not only had they been in the presence of royalty, but their village had been saved from a terror that none of them could ever have imagined. A man with a snake for a penis? A psychopath who had preyed on women for too long? Who would ever have believed such a thing existed? As the palanquin vanished from sight, a sense of relief washed over the village. They had been spared, their lives forever changed by the bravery of Iara and her father, the king. Iara was hailed as a hero throughout the kingdom, and her name would be remembered for generations as the princess who outsmarted a serial killer with a snake penis and freed her people from the terror. And so, the kingdom of Ankole thrived once again, its women safe, its people united in peace. What do you think of this story, guys? Did you like the story? Don't forget to like this video. Please subscribe, hit the bell icon so that you're notified every time I post new videos. Thank you for watching, guys.